with the first pick.
Thunderstruck! Thunderstruck! Yeah, Thunderstruck!
Welcome into the Fantasy Rant podcast presented by Stadium Rant. I'm your host, Dan Baker, accompanied by my co-hosts Lee Cook, Mason Beck, and Evan Gooding. On today's episode, we are going to be breaking down NFL rookies or incoming NFL rookies. We got a lot to cover, so this is going to be a two-parter. We're going to start off at the top this week and work our way down. But before we jump in to the NFL, these incoming rookies, we got some big news breaking today. Stephon Diggs sent to the Houston Texans. The Bills sent Stephon Diggs, sent a 2024 sixth, 2025 fifth, with the Texans sending back a 2025 second round pick. It is the Vikings pick. So, I mean, if Sam Darnold starts, that could be early second. We'll see how that goes. But we have the Bills are also taking on $31 million in dead cap in 2024. I was really surprised to see the dead cap figure there. I thought that the Texans would take the majority of that on. They have 30 at the time of the trade, it was 31 mil in cap space. At this time, they have 29.6 mil in cap space, with the Bills having just 7.6. Seems like a long-term move, with the Stephon Diggs being owed a lot of money over the next 4 years. He is 31 heading into 31, or 30 years old heading into 31 years old at the beginning of the season, I believe. What's your overall feeling on this? And then we'll move on later into the winners and losers from this trade. But overall, what are you guys thinking about the Stephon Diggs trade? Do you think, from an NFL standpoint, does this help the Texans as much as we think it does? Are people starting to kind of overvalue the impact this will have? Or do you think the Bills will make the playoffs this year? I'm going to send it over to Lee first.
So, a bit shocked, honestly. I mean, not shocked that Diggs got traded, but to Houston, that was not on my bingo card.
Right.
Really shocked at the dead cap. That's the most dead cap for a non-quarterback in a single season ever. I think it's the third or fourth most, period, but there's only been a few quarterbacks above that. It really shows you that Buffalo was just done, and they wanted to be out of the Stephon Diggs business. I think from an NFL perspective, certainly a win for Houston. He does not have to be the 160 target, 120 catch guy there with the other young receivers. I don't know what kind of mentor he's going to be to Tank and Nico, but just adding that to the wide receiver room, it's a very scary wide receiver room. And it's Houston doing what you're supposed to do when you have a rookie quarterback on a rookie contract and you feel like you can win now. They're giving him all the tools. I mean, the Joe Mixon trade, they're putting everything in place to try to make a run at a Super Bowl. Still need to see some additions on that defense, but that's a scary offense right now.
Very scary. Evan?
Man, I think I was talking to you guys a little bit about it earlier. Like, with the fact that we got Keenan, we sent Keenan away. As a Chargers fan, I was pretty upset about this, analyzing this trade now. Like, they're both on the wrong side of 30, but who was the better wide receiver last year? Keenan. And we got a fourth, maybe, or it could be a sixth back, or like we sent him away for a fourth or sixth. Like, that was just frustrating to see. I get that they got had to send a couple picks away to get that, but I don't know. I think it's going to be awesome for Houston. I do think it's going to benefit Stroud significantly. I think Diggs takes a little bit of a dip for me, in my opinion, just because I don't think he's going to be able to eat as much as he was, anywhere else he's been. But I'm definitely afraid for Tank Dell or Nico Collins as well.
Yeah. And, I'm kind of there with you, Evan. I think it definitely does help CJ Stroud. I mean, never hurts a quarterback to add another elite wide receiver. Diggs obviously, might be going downhill a little bit as far as his talent, but I mean, it definitely does help Stroud. It hurts me a lot because I have a ton of Tank Dell shares in fantasy, and I mean, I think in the long run, Tank Dell is still going to be a solid option, but I think the next couple of years where I was really looking forward to relying off Tank Dell to give some productive numbers, I think it really does hurt him and Nico Collins as well. I don't like the move for Diggs either. I think just, when there's two other receivers like that, and they also brought in a very serviceable running back, I just don't think with the amount of talent in that wide receiver room, I think there's going to be too many hands to feed.
Yeah, and I hear what you guys are saying, and I do think that overall this definitely hurts Diggs' ceiling. He's not going to get, like Lee said, the 160 targets that we're accustomed to seeing him get. However, I do think that we saw in the back half of the season, specifically when Joe Brady took over as OC, that his floor can be really low. In the back half of the season, when Joe Brady took over as offensive coordinator in week 11, Stephon Diggs was wide receiver 42 from that point on. He did not look good. They were not utilizing him. They were leaning on the run. The touchdowns came through the run game and Josh Allen. And Stephon Diggs just really took such a dive. So I think this raises his floor, but lowers his ceiling. He's going to be somewhere in the middle. I think overall he'll end up being a high end wide receiver too, and people will probably overdraft or overvalue him in redraft leagues. I think that the name value is going to stay around. The promise of CJ Stroud is there, and people. I mean, he is the wide receiver one there, but is he actually going to see wide receiver one value? Probably not. On top of having the guys that we mentioned, Nico Collins and Tank Dell, Dalton Schultz is a viable receiver. He proved his worth there enough to the point to get a big enough extension. That's four receivers that are solid on that team, on top of Joe Mixon, who is a decent pass catching running back and will also eat up some touchdowns. So overall, I think this offense got better. There's going to be tons of scoring opportunity here. And I do think that Diggs will be the receptions leader on this team. However, I completely agree that his ceiling is capped, and that is what you're looking for, especially in the first two rounds of fantasy drafts. So redraft, I am probably not going to get many shares of Stephon Diggs. In Dynasty, if anybody is down on him as a Diggs manager, I will happily take Diggs for, honestly, around the 109, I'd say. I've talked about it before. I think there's a steep drop off at 108, and even Brian Thomas Jr. has enough promise to deliver some fantasy impact. After that, I think it's kind of a shot in the dark, and most of those wide receivers will probably not have as many wide receiver one seasons as Stephon Diggs may have moving forward. So that's where I'm at on it. I think it's a really huge a trade, probably the biggest trade that we've seen this season, even with a lot of big trades happening right now. However, I just don't see the redraft value to take him as high as he's likely to get drafted. Anything else to add, boys?
So, I'm a Diggs owner in Dynasty, and I think I would take 109 for him right now. Just a little scared of the way the season finished. Change of scenery. And this happens a lot with top end wide receivers that are diva-ish. I don't know if that's a word. They're a bit of a diva. We saw how unhappy and how much he rocked the boat with Josh Allen. I know everybody's to the moon on CJ Stroud, but he's still a young quarterback. What happens after a game or two if he goes to Nico and Tank and doesn't target Stephon? Does he rock the boat again? Does he get angry? How good of a teammate is he going to be in Houston? I think he's a downgrade for quarterback. I think it's hard to argue that CJ would be an upgrade from Josh Allen.
100%.
So I think it could be a bit of a bumpy road. And at 30, going into 31, if I could get 109, 110, I think I would want to sell. And I did just want to kind of talk about some of the peripherals real quick. Because this is a huge trade that affects the Texans and the Bills roster. To me, the biggest winner out of both teams is Dalton Kincaid. I feel like that's kind of probably going to be the consensus there. It doesn't matter who we bring in as a rookie wide receiver. We almost assuredly are drafting outside of a Brandon Ayuk or T. Higgins trade, which is going to be tough to do with that kind of dead cap they're taking on.
Don't you dare bring up Brandon Ayuk.
I mean, they do have that extra second now, so maybe a move is there, but I don't see it, especially taking on $31 million. They're going to have to get a wide receiver on a rookie contract in there. So Dalton Kincaid, and the other obvious one is Curtis Samuel. He's a veteran wide receiver. He signed a decent money deal there. He's familiar with Joe Brady. He's going to get 120 targets probably now. They're going to have to use him quite a bit. So to me, those two guys are buy. Obviously, if you have Dalton Kincaid, he's a hold, but it's going to be tough to get him, and the price just went way up. But Curtis Samuel is probably still attainable, maybe a late second, maybe a third plus, and I would certainly be buying Curtis Samuel at that price.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll talk about it more. I had some guys going to the rookies, wide receivers that we're about to talk about. I had a couple of them, not a couple. I had one specifically going to the Bills. Had to change that because it no longer was a fit with the wide receivers in that room. I think they need to go after a guy that's going to be a prototypical X now. Really, there's not a ton of them, but there's more in this draft class than we've seen in the past few. A few bigger bodied guys that are built like what the old NFL thinks as your true number one. So with that being said, unless anybody else has something to add, let's get into the rookies.
I just want to say a little quick add-on. I think this does boost Shakir's value a little bit, at least now. Obviously they are going to bring in someone, and that might move Shakir to the wide receiver 3. But I think when you move on from somebody with the talent level of Stephon Diggs, that it does show that the organization and the coaching does have a little more faith in their wide receiver room than a lot of people perceive. So I could see Shakir at least this season getting a little more targets, getting a little more work in, seeing what he truly has until the wide receiver they draft this year, is fully NFL ready.
All right, real quick then, I'm going to throw in. We didn't talk about CJ Stroud, obvious winner. And then I would say the other guy not mentioned, James Cook. I think that's the biggest winner in this, in my opinion. They showed a willingness to lean on the run game, and I think this is a clear sign that they're going to continue to do that, unless the Bills move up and grab one of the top 3 in Marvin Harrison, Neighbors, or Odunze. There's not like the true stud wide receiver 1 that is going to come in year 1 and replace Stephon Diggs' production. So I think that Cook could see an increase in his receptions. I think that he'll see an increase in his total carries over the season. And I do think that it's just the willingness to lean on him after seeing what he can do when given the reins over the back half of the season.
Yeah,
all right.
I would agree. He was my third there, James Cook. And I think the other thing, not just because I already, with that offense and what we saw with Joe Brady, I could see him definitely catching more balls. I mean, I could see him catching – I don't know what his receptions number was from the past season, but I could see a 50-plus reception total this year. He has those skills.
100%. I feel like that's what a lot of people thought they brought him in to do.
Yeah.
And, like you said, he has the skill set. I'm looking at it now, 54 targets, 44 receptions last year. So that's a healthy amount over a 17-game pace.
Yeah.
Was that about roughly 2.5 receptions a game? So
I would amend that then. I would say 60. If I didn't know he had quite that many. I knew they're utilizing him. I mean, the biggest thing for him, if they can just give him the goal line work, he could be a top 8 running back. But
dude,
taking away that goal line work really
cut it out with this Latavius Murray, Leonard Fournette crap. Like work some outside zones for James Cook. You don't got to go right up the gut. Just give him an opportunity to outrun the outside man.
Read options. I mean, you've got Josh Allen that can run it up between the tackles if you need to. I mean, absolutely. Get outside the tackles, have that option in there. But, yeah, just try not to hammer in the nail with these old, slow running backs when you have James Cook. As a James Cook owner on 4 of 4 dynasty teams, please give him the ball inside the 5.
4 of 4. That's a big believer there.
One other quick question before we move to the receivers, and we can just kind of go around and name one. Biggest loser out of this trade, to me, again, a little bit obvious, but I think it's Dalton Schultz. I think I think his red zone targets specifically are going to go down. There's a big difference between being the third option in a explosive offense and being the fourth option.
Yeah, no, that's very fair. What do you guys think, Evan?
Yeah. I mean, me and Mason are, you see what me and Mason are discussing. We are having a side conversation over here in the meantime about, the potential trade there that you guys are talking about or brought up. But I mean, in essence, I'm ready to get to these wide receivers.
Great addition, guys. All right, let's get to the wide receivers. We have Marvin Harrison Jr. obviously at the top. Just insane prospect. Came into the combine. He didn't run 40. He didn't do any testing. He has a 6'3" height, 209 weight, 21.6 years old. We have a whole episode deep diving Marvin Harrison Jr. that I will drop in the comments after the show is done because I have learned that the live comments do not translate to the actual show. So after the show's done, we'll post that link. You guys can take a look at it. Really quick, do you guys have any different projected landing spot other than the Cardinals?
For Marvin Harrison Jr., the only other place I kind of see him going is the Chargers, because there is a lot of rumors that Cardinals are trying to move out from the 104. And I think if anyone trades up to the 104, they're not trading up for Marvin Harrison Jr. I think they're trading up for, either JJ McCarthy or Jaden Daniels or May, whoever falls to the 104. And that's the only other option I really see. But yeah, no, Cardinals, Chargers are the only two spots I really see him going. And with both spots, I mean, they both got quarterbacks who have proven themselves over the years. To be solid fantasy providers. And so I think either spot is a great landing spot.
Okay.
I've heard those rumors too. And I hope that that's the case. I just don't see it. I don't see it.
Yeah, I would love for him to fall in Arizona. That would be a great landing spot. They have no wide receivers there right now, just Greg Dortch and Michael Wilson for the most part. That would be a great landing spot for him. Chargers would be a great landing spot for him. If he dips any further beyond that, if the Giants traded up 2 spots to grab him from the Cardinals, I would be heartbroken. I don't want to see targets coming from Daniel Jones. It's just not going to be pretty if either New England or the Giants end up taking him. But I really don't see him slipping beyond the 4th spot personally. I think he is a much more reliable NFL player than JJ McCarthy would be, even with obviously, quarterback being the most important position. That being said, Superflex rookie draft. Where would you take him? I personally have him 102. I think that if you landed the 101 and you don't need a quarterback in Superflex draft, congratulations. Somehow you sucked enough to get it, or you made the right trade to go and get that 101. If you're in that situation, go and grab Marvin Harrison Jr. at the 101. However, most leagues, I think he's going to be 102.
I hope you're right, because I have 102 in a trade me and Mason made earlier in the season. I'm really counting on that being Marvin Harrison.
Hey.
But I think he's 101. I think the one comp I would have, and obviously the quarterback class on paper wasn't as strong last season, but Bijan went 1 in every draft I had, and a 4 in Superflex. I think Marvin Harrison's a stronger prospect than Bijan, especially because of the position, but just overall longevity. So I think he should be 101. I think if you're quarterback starved, I think you should look to trade back a little bit. I think Marvin Harrison is clearly 101, and I might have neighbors at 102, to be honest.
Whoa.
Yeah.
We'll touch on that in a second, but Mason, touch on Marvin Harrison Jr.
I'm honestly, in my personal board, I have him going 103. Since our last week's show, I've been getting stormed with Drake May stuff on YouTube and Instagram, and I've just been watching so much stuff on Drake May. I truly believe that it should be, Caleb Williams 101, Drake May 102, and obviously you could argue Marvin Harrison is the better prospect, but in Superflex, quarterbacks are the most valuable position. I mean, if Drake May or Caleb Williams does go out and they're solid productive, then our producers, I mean, the amount of value you can get back if you want to trade them out is far more than Marvin Harrison Jr. I think would ever touch.
Yeah, no, I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is the 101 for sure for me too. I think it's just too risky with some of these guys. He's guaranteed locked in. He's the only one that's really guaranteed locked in for me. I mean, Neighbors, he is kind of there as well, but I would still take quarterbacks over Neighbors. I can't say I wouldn't do it for Marvin Harrison Jr. We're talking about a guy that could be, somebody who you build a legacy,
I mean, all right. So I wanted to touch. Hold on. Name me your top 5 picks in order in the Superflex rookie draft. All right, just drop the comment, you guys. If you're tuning in live, say who you would take top 5 picks in Superflex rookie draft. Also, hopefully nobody sound bit or took that sound bite right there of me saying, "All right, I want to touch," and then cut away to the comments. That's not good news. That's not good news. All right, but I think that I think taking Marvin Harrison Jr. if you are a QB needy team is as a 102 is a little bit crazy to me just because what Caleb Williams is walking into. I don't think we've really seen the 101, like the first quarterback taken, walking into a situation where they have arguably 2 wide receiver ones on the team. They got Keenan Allen, they got DJ Moore, they got Cole Kmet. They even brought in the second tight end, Gerald Everett, like who's no slouch as far as a receiving tight end goes. I think that I think that he's walking into one of the best situations you could ask for. Defense is not bad. DeAndre Swift, a receiving running back. I just don't really see a situation where Caleb Williams fails to the point where he is not going to see his super flex dynasty value increase by 2025.
Yeah, so I would go. I don't necessarily disagree, but I'm just, and this is foolish because history you can't really count on it. You can't count on precedents, but Chicago is a place where quarterbacks go to die.
Yeah, not a 4,000-yard passer in its history. It's a long history.
I mean, which is insane. Have they had a better quarterback than Jimmy McMahon? Jimmy McMahon is the best quarterback in franchise history, in modern history at least. I would go Harrison 1. Depending on your situation, I would go Caleb or Neighbors 2, and then the other at 3. Again, if you're at 3 and you're absolutely quarterback starved, maybe you go Jaden, but he's a lock for your top 5. And I'm taking Drake May at 5, even if he ends up with the Patriots. We went over it last week. I'm a believer.
Yeah, no, I think
just the first line.
All right, let's move on. We got Malik Neighbors up next. LSU wide receiver coming in at 6 foot, 200 pounds, 20.6 years old. Fantasy Pros ranking wide receiver 2. His dynasty ranking, Fantasy Pros dynasty ranking, wide receiver 11. I didn't mention that for Marvin Harrison. He's obviously wide receiver 1 in the rookie rankings, wide receiver 7 in the dynasty rankings, and this is positional. So he's wide receiver 7. On the PFF big board, they got Neighbors going at the 4 spot. 4 spot would be the Cardinals. We'll see how that goes. Again, this is one of the wide receivers we deep dived already. But if I was to project a landing spot, I would say the Chargers are fools if they pass on him because they are so needy at wide receiver right now, only having really Joshua Palmer and QJ, who disappointed massively in his rookie season. But all of the talk has been leaning towards improving the offensive line. Joe Alt will be there. I think that he is going to be an incredible offensive tackle for years to come. However, I think there is going to be more value gained through having a true wide receiver 1 for Justin Herbert. Though they want to build on the running game in a Harbaugh offense, I think that there's even arguably more to be gained in the running game from having a true threat in the wide receiver game. If it's just Palmer and QJ, they're going to stack the box all day long. It doesn't matter how good your offensive line is when you have 8 players in the box. So like I think that truly they really need Neighbors, and if they don't take them, I will laugh at them in the draft, but will yet to be seen. If they don't take them, then I do think that the next team up in the Giants will jump on Malik Neighbors. Evan, you are the Chargers fan here. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I would love me some Malik Neighbors too, and I would also not mind some Joe Alt either, just because I study the offensive players. I don't really study the line players as much, and the difference in ability from Malik to some of these other guys below him are not that far. Like, this is a really deep wide receiver class. A lot of these guys could be wide receiver ones on teams, and I just don't know if that's the same. If there's the same amount of depth at line there. So if they make that move, it could pan out because as long as we do take somebody in pretty high pedigree from this class, I believe we're idiots if we don't. That's for sure. But does it necessarily have to be Malik Neighbors? No, doesn't have to be him. But I would love him for sure.
All right. Lee?
So I would just chime in. I think your difference between Malik Neighbors and who you would get in the second round at wide receiver is a ocean of difference compared to Joe Alt and the tackles, because this is a very deep tackle class as well. There's some really solid tackles you can get in the second round. To me, and again, this might be out on a little bit of a limb, if you remove Marvin Harrison, Malik Neighbors is the best wide receiver prospect since Jamar Chase. This is a guy who would go top 4 or 5 in almost any draft. He is a generational talent at wide receiver, and that's why I would consider taking him at 2. And I get that it doesn't necessarily fit the Jim Harbaugh style of play, but honestly, if you're going to take a tackle at 5, and Joe Alt is incredible, don't get me wrong, but I would strongly consider trading back because there's going to be some teams that will trade up for Neighbors and pay you enough where you guys got enough positions. Obviously, trading back requires a partner, and most fans, a lot of times they want to trade back and accumulate picks, but this would be a great situation for the Chargers to trade back if they're going to pass on Neighbors.
Yeah, no, I'm going to kind of support what I was saying about Marvin Harrison, that, Cardinals will trade away the 104, and then Marvin Harrison does go to the Chargers. And sadly, although I do really not want it, I love Neighbors as a prospect. I think he's very talented. I think he will be good in the long run, but I do see him going to the Giants. Even if Marvin Harrison does end up going to the Cardinals, I mean, Herbert injury concerns have been a big problem. And, when he is your franchise guy, I think you do kind of got to protect him. So I do see them going Alt if Marvin Harrison is not there. And I think Neighbors will have a very rough start going to the Giants. And I'm not happy about that, but I kind of see that really happening.
Yeah, and I guess actually from what Lee said too, like if they are equally as deep like tackle and wide receiver, then I definitely want Malik Neighbors.
Yeah, I do think that Lee hit it on the head. I think there is a giant difference after Rome Odunze specifically, and that like between whoever you would get in Malik Neighbors and in the second round. And then on top of it, you guys got Rashawn Slater. Like, he is a definitely above average, at least left tackle. Right tackle's lacking. I think that's a position that you could go out if you trade for an average right tackle this year, next year, whatever it may be. I think you can make up a ton of difference in the guy that you have starting right now in Trey Pipkins. Then if you went out and traded for an average wide receiver this year or next, instead of grabbing Malik Neighbors.
One thing to add there, I think there's a case study pretty recently. I mentioned Jamar Chase. The year they drafted Jamar Chase,
Sewell.
All the analysts said that they should take Sewell.
Yes, sir.
And they got panned on ESPN and some other outlets for not taking an offensive lineman. It's worked out pretty well for them.
Yeah, worked out very well. I think that was absolutely magnified because they made the Super Bowl the year prior. Yeah. And then like Penei Sewell is going to make a good amount of difference for sure. He is definitely a top 5 young left tackle for a squad. But nobody can do what Jamar Chase is doing right now, except for maybe 2 other guys in the league. So we'll move on, though. We got a lot of guys to cover still. I am going to let's talk about Rome Odunze. I will start off here. This is one of the first guys we haven't gotten to touch on that we already talked about a ton. Rome Odunze, I will say when we talked just after the Super Bowl, I was wrong, guys. I was wrong. I will take full responsibility for this. I was down on Odunze because I did not see the athleticism that people were talking about, at least as far as like the speed, acceleration, agility goes. The more and more tape that I watch, the more I am impressed by this guy. He is not just a contested catch wide receiver, not just a big bodied guy. And I forgot to mention it up top 6'3, 212 came in at the combine out of Washington. He's 21.8 years old. He is the first wide receiver in reception perception history to come out with a above average grade on all routes in the route tree. That's insane. That is what you want in your guy. A guy who can do it all, a guy that has above average athleticism. Let's see, I got it pulled up here. In the combine, he ran a 4.45 40-yard dash at again 6'3", 212. He had a vertical jump in the 85th percentile, a 20-yard shuttle. So he's got that acceleration in the 91st percentile. The guy has it all. On top of it, he was fourth in receiving yards, fifth in yards per reception, sixth in touchdowns, 10th in yards per route run, which is a sticky stat heading into the NFL, fourth in ADOT. He's really a total package, and I think any team that gets him is going to be lucky to have him as their true X wide receiver. All right, I'm going to send it Mason's way first this time. What do you think about Rome Odunze?
I mean, I think I'm a little higher up on him than most people. I mean, he's got good size, and you know he's very quick with changing his directions, and that is a big thing in the NFL. I could see him being a very solid, short catch guy, medium catch guy who does turn it into big yards just by getting open space. He's very good at route running, which backs up kind of what I was saying. If he can, change his direction quick, run the route as it's meant to be, I think it's going to be a lot. And I think where I have him landing, which I'll save a little bit, I think it's a perfect spot for him to honestly develop into a very good future NFL wide receiver. I mean, maybe his first year isn't as productive as we want it to be, but I could see it showing a lot of signs. Honestly, he's good at catching the ball, which is a big thing. A lot of people overlook just the hand.
You want your receivers to catch the ball.
I mean, a lot of people underlook hands, and I do like his handwork, and that is a big thing. Kadarius Toney, look at him; he doesn't know how to catch. I mean, my sweet prince, Kadarius Toney, but
your sweet prince. R.I.P.
Yeah.
Evan, what you got here?
Yeah, I mean, you hit it on though. He's well above average in almost every category. I can't believe that was actually the only rookie wide receiver to have that from reception perception. So
I mean, there's so many routes in the route tree. You're bound to have a average or below average in one.
I thought I saw something to say it was just the past 4 years, but I was like, who in 4 years ago would do that as well? So I couldn't think of it though. But yeah, I mean, I love him. This is somebody who I watched play personally. I would go to UW games and see him as well. So I could be a little biased here, but he's one of the reasons why I think that, there's not too big of an ocean between Neighbors and him. And I get the difference. We'll talk about some of the negatives later, but he's a versatile weapon. He's going to be a versatile weapon for any NFL offense, and I know he's going to be utilized, and I'm looking forward to it.
Just really quick, there isn't a big difference between Neighbors and Odunze, but there is a big difference. You're saying between grabbing a guy with your first pick and the second round pick.
And I said he's one of the reasons there isn't an ocean. We'll get to the other ones.
Odunze's not going in the second. Odunze's top 10.
Yeah, but no, he's one of the reasons. There's other rookie wide receivers I like here that I do think could be.
I'll be interested to hear those later. See what you got here.
So don't get me wrong, I like Odunze, but before I get into it, I do think there's a big difference between him and Neighbors. I think Neighbors is a solid, a really, really good wide receiver too, coming into the league. And the potential to be a wide receiver one. I think Neighbors is a slam dunk. I mean, like I said, maybe I'm a little higher on Neighbors than some, but to me, I think the biggest difference is the explosiveness. Odunze is pretty good in everything, but he has nowhere near the explosiveness that Neighbors has. And in today's NFL, I think that makes a big difference. But Odunze is going to eat up NFL zone defenses. That's where he's going to just thrive. The route running, just the ball skills. He's got a beautiful catch radius, and he's very fluid in everything that he does. The size and the strength. Like I said, I do project him as a wide receiver one a few years in, but like I said, I won't hammer the point home too much because we'll see, and I could certainly be wrong, but I think Neighbors is a game changing type of wide receiver. I think Odunze is going to be a very good wide receiver.
No, you bring up a good point. There is a difference in their style for sure. Like Odunze is much larger. Neighbors is much more agile. Neighbors is going to make guys miss after the catch, whereas Odunze can get downfield and maybe the higher A dot, but it's going to win more contested catches than Neighbors would. So it's definitely a good point to bring up. They're very different. With Odunze, he had a 87th percentile success rate against man coverage, 81st against zone, and 92nd against press. He also won against double coverage 77.3% of the time. It's an insanely high rate for any player. And the guys just go. I think overall, this guy is going to succeed no matter what team he's on because of that contested catch rate. Even if he ended up going to a team like the Giants and Daniel Jones hucking up prayers, Odunze is going to come down with it more often than not. I don't know if Neighbors would do the same thing, but whereas if Neighbors goes to the Giants, they're going to set up bubble screens for him all day where he's just creating yards after the catch. Both are really going to impact your fantasy lineup. And like Lee touched on, I think both guys are going to be wide receiver ones at least a couple of years into their career.
And I don't want it to sound like I'm down on Odunze because I do think the difference between Odunze and the next wide receiver is greater than the difference between him and Neighbors. But there is, we're splitting hairs, and when you get to that really top level guy, can you be? I could see Neighbors having a wide receiver one season in the NFL, not too far in the future. I think Odunze, and when I say one, I mean one overall. I think Odunze could be a wide receiver one as in your top 12, but I don't know if he'll ever threaten to be the wide receiver one.
I agree. So just touching on it really quick, it's kind of interesting because we on the reception perception from Matt Harmon, great tool. If you guys haven't checked it out, definitely check it out. Odunze broke the first tackle more often than Malik Neighbors, based on the 30 opportunities that Odunze had. He had 50% of his first tackles broken, whereas Malik Neighbors on 39 of his opportunities broke 30.8% of the first tackle. However, when you get to the second tackle, Odunze broke 20% of the second defender tackles, whereas Odunze broke only 6.7% of those tackles. So it's that shiftiness that, like after you make the first guy miss, can you adjust and make the next guy miss and really make a huge play out of it? Odunze is not going to be that guy where Neighbors will be, but Odunze has that downfield threat, that contested catch rate that we're looking for downfield. Let's move on, though. We got the only negatives that I had, and we really only touched on it, was the agility. Agility's not there. Not going to shake and bake the guy. But did anybody else have any other big negatives on Odunze?
Yeah, no.
I don't have any big negatives on him.
Just that he didn't play against the best defenses there, but
That's true. All right, so let's move on to player style comp. I have Larry Fitzgerald, surprisingly. Obviously, big comp, not expecting the career that first ballot Hall of Famer Larry Fitzgerald will have or had, but they were the same exact height down to the 1/8 of an inch at 6'2", 7/8 of an inch. Odunze is 13 pounds lighter. He had a 0.03 second faster 40 time, a 0.06 faster three cone drill, a 0.25 second faster 20-yard shuttle, and had a 1 inch higher vertical. That being said, Larry Fitzgerald had those freaking palms, bro. He had the big old hands. He's gonna bring in more I think there was a fun stat we dropped way early in this podcast, but Larry Fitzgerald had more career tackles as a wide receiver than he did drops. Insane. Absolutely insane. I'm not predicting Odunze to be that level. However, I think their play style is going to be comparable. Contested catches, route running, that's where they win. So that's my comp. Lee, what did you have?
Kind of in the same vein, maybe not quite the Fitzgerald level, but it could be argued, and this is a big comp as well. But Mike Evans, the contested balls, Mike Evans,
Okay.
he's not quite as tall as Mike Evans, but he plays long. And if he has that type of career, then obviously whoever gets him is getting an absolute steal. But he looked like Mike Evans on tape to me.
I'm gonna drop it back from talking about how the elite level players that you guys are talking about. I see a very similar kind of play style to Cortland Sutton. I think he's gonna do a lot better than Cortland is, but that's kind of where I see similar play style. I do think he is a very more talented version of Cortland Sutton, and I do believe in Rome, but yeah, I see a little bit of Sutton comparisons.
I literally had better Cortland Sutton written down on my note. But I like Lee's comp of Mike Evans too. That's actually a really good comp.
I have another player that I hope that we get to that I have as in my opinion, a dead-on Cortland Sutton comparison. So hopefully we get there. In the sake of time, we're 40 minutes deep. Let's go. Just no arguments. Where is your rookie super flex rookie draft value? I have him at 106.
Same.
I have him 106. Unless you're really needing a tight end, then maybe Bowers goes 106. So 106, 107.
Fair. Lee?
Yeah, I'm at 106 or 107, so I'm with Mason. And I think really if you're tight end premium, you probably go Bowers at 6. But in a standard tight end, I'm going Rome at 6.
Okay. All right, let's move on to Brian Thomas Jr., 6'3", coming out of LSU. He weighed in at 209 at the combine, 21.4 years old. We talked about him a bunch. We have a deep dive on him, Jaden Daniels, and Malik Neighbors in the same episode, tackled all those LSU players. We will drop the link to that later on. The one thing I'll touch on, projected landing spot and Superflex rookie value. I have him going to the Colts as the deep threat there. Michael Pittman Jr. can do it all. Josh Downs more slot. They need a field stretcher that is not Alec Pierce because he's not getting the job done. And then I have him at 109. Let's hit on it quick. Lee, you can kick it.
108, slightly ahead. I think he's probably the next guy off the board once we get past Bowers and Odunze.
Mason?
Yeah, I have him going 108, 109. And honestly, I have him going Steelers. I think he's going to be a later first-round pick. And Steelers are a team that is very desperate of wide receivers. They don't, they're really only wide receiver that is proven himself at all is Pickens, who, is not the speed factor. And I think Brian Thomas adding some speed to that offense would help.
Yeah. Evan?
For the landing spot, I love Kansas City for him too. I see it happening. I don't want it to happen, but I see it. Is that where we're going on? Sorry, I was sidetracked there.
No, you're good. That and Superflex rookie draft value.
Oh, rookie draft value 107.
107.
So
all right, yeah. The only reason I had him at 109 is I do think that JJ McCarthy is going to end up having a decent landing spot and will jump ahead of him without the landing spot. Let's move on to a guy we haven't talked about, though. We got Troy Franklin. Troy Franklin out of Oregon coming in at 6'2", 176 pounds, 21.1 years old, one of the younger wide receivers in this draft class. Right now, Fantasy Pros has him as the wide receiver 5. In the Dynasty ranking, wide receiver 46. And then PFF has him on the big board as the 40th overall pick. So let's touch on Troy Franklin a little bit, talk about what we see in the film. Evan, I'm going to send it your way first.
Oh man, you're gonna ask me to talk about a guy that I really don't like.
Oh boy, let's hear it.
And again, this is not being a UW homer, but he's a great separator with good hands, and he's pretty solid after the catch, can make a guy miss. But I mean, you're making me want to just talk about the negatives right away. I mean, one of the worst
Do
things
it.
that I saw for him too was that on the biggest stage against UW, he had the worst game of the season, going 4 for 34. You can't have that. The combine did not help, and if anything, justified my opinions about him ahead of time. So just not in on Troy Franklin, but I understand. I mean, he's a significant producer. He produced, but a lot of those yards were against some again, UW, Oregon. They don't play the toughest defenses.
Mason?
I mean, some positives with him is that he does have good speed, and that he is good off the release. He does have good yards after catch, which can be very valued. There's a lot of plays you can work with guys that get a lot of yards after catch. But my big thing is he's not necessarily very good with the 50-50 ball. And, that is when you're facing a lot better talent. I think, being able to win the 50-50 ball is a huge deal in the NFL. It definitely will take out a lot of targets where, if a quarterback's under pressure and they're just like, oh, I got to get the ball out, I think that really hurts him, not necessarily being the last resort target if, there's nobody open in a big play situation.
Lee?
So I don't know where you guys, all our listeners are located, but look outside. It's probably about to snow because me and Evan are agreeing tonight on a normal amount. I'm not as high on Troy Franklin either. I don't have him. I wouldn't say anywhere near, but I have him significantly lower than the fifth ranked receiver. There's several guys on this list I like more. I think everybody kind of touched on some of the positives. I think the route running is solid as well, and obviously speed translates, but your speed advantages are always going to be lessened in the NFL unless you have absolutely elite speed. He's borderline as far as the elite speed. I know he didn't have a great combine. There was particularly that one video that was pretty bad, but the route running is going to translate, and that's going to make him a solid wide receiver too for some time. But I don't see the ceiling there. He's not a good blocker. He has a very skinny frame, and obviously that's not the first thing you're looking for as a fantasy wide receiver. But look at what happened with Jamison Williams. Obviously, the injury, the gambling, all of that. But the biggest thing that kept him off the field after that was his inability to block. And when he finally started throwing some downfield blocks and improved that, that's when his playing time improved. You have to be on the field to get targets, and the blocking could be an issue with him staying on the field. And again, kind of Mason touched on the 50-50 balls. I think it's maybe even a little more than that. It's just the ball in the air. He doesn't play the ball in the air on any contested catches great, which, again, at the college level, no offense here, Evan, but when you're playing in the Pac-12, you're not going to have to pull those down as much. But in the NFL, you're not running wide open that often. You have to be able to get those contested balls, and I think that's where he's really going to struggle early on. I'm more in that wide receiver 8 to 10 range than I am 5.
I wonder if we're going to have the same draft value. I'm really curious. We'll find out.
Right, we'll find out very soon. So yeah, I have the top end speed there. It was funny at the combine with that gauntlet drill. That was watching him zigzag all over the place. Not a good look. Not a good look. But overall, I think he has a great release package for a guy that's 176 pounds. That's somebody that you'd be worried about. However, his hands and his hand fighting and footwork is superb. Honestly, like he can get off of anybody, and then he has enough speed to really separate. I don't know if this guy ever ran track, but a 4.41 is not terrible, considering like we're looking at game speed. The underwear test is great and all, but the game speed is what I'm looking at, and he created separation downfield. So I do like that. I like that his hands. He's not a guy that's going to drop too many balls. He doesn't in at least the film that I watched, he did not rely on body catches ever. That's what I'm looking for in a downfield threat. Felt like QJ really is an example of a guy who is a downfield threat in college, but mainly relied on body catches, and that's not going to do it in the NFL. So I like all that. I do think he has good yards after catch ability, but he does not have the agility I would expect out of a guy that is that light in weight. You would want a little bit more bend, a little bit more flexibility there. And then the other thing is he didn't have like a very extensive route tree. I don't think there was a ton that I saw that he was running these nuanced routes where he has decisions to make. So overall, I don't think that he is. I think that he is around wide receiver 5 to 6, like Fantasy Pros has him ranked. But I don't think that there is the same closeness. I can't think of a better word for it, but like there's a big jump after Brian Thomas Jr. to Troy Franklin, in my opinion. So that's where I have him for player style comp. I'll lead it off and then I'll kick it over to Lee here. I have skinnier Christian Watson. He is not nearly as heavy as Christian Watson is, not the same athlete as Christian Watson is. However, I saw similar styles in their game in that they can create separation downfield specifically, and that they really don't, have that ability to like, contested catches. I was trying to think of a better word for it, but contested catches that is not where they excel despite their height and size.
Yeah, so I'm not going to call him chosen, but Robbie Anderson was the player.
Oh my goodness.
That kind of shows you where I'm at with Troy.
That's so much disrespect, bro.
Yeah. Yeah, I might be giving too much respect for my comp. Dan, you know him. Travis Benjamin. I know him too. Played for the Chargers. Played for
I
Cleveland.
mean, I definitely know him, but I think that's still super disrespectful.
Yeah.
Robbie Anderson was better than Travis Benjamin.
Yeah, I agree.
Disrespectful to Travis Benjamin, I meant. Sorry.
Yeah, I got Darius Slayton, and I can see him kind of producing what Darius Slayton does. Just having those weeks, a couple weeks a year where it's like, oh yeah, I should pick him up to my roster, and then you start him, and you're like, oh, why? Why did I do that? That was a mistake. I mean, I'm not a believer in Troy Franklin at all.
I did that with Mingo last year. Yeah, I could see it. I could see the similarities.
Mason, I'm sending it back to you for the landing spot.
His landing spot. I mean, I have him. Sorry, Evan. I have him going early second round to the Chargers. If they do not draft a receiver in the first, I see him. I think he's a very early second round pick, and I think anyone who drafts him there is going to be mistaken. I don't think he's an NFL level receiver. I really think he is he's a good college receiver, but that's where I kind of see him going. If they do not draft a receiver, and then besides that, I don't know, maybe, there is some teams that are desperate towards the end of the round as a receiver. I could maybe see end of the first round. I could maybe see Ravens just because they need a guy who has good speed.
That was my selection there, Ravens, for that reason too. I think it's probably one of the better fits for him as well.
Lee?
Yeah, so Mason was in line with my thinking, and I know Evan won't like it, but I do think the Chargers are probably taking Joe Alt, and I think they're taking Troy Franklin early second.
It's honestly, Mason, as soon as you said it, I was like, that sounds right. Like I could see Franklin on the back of a powder blue jersey. So I do like that selection overall. I don't
Justin
have
Herbert
him
will make him a
going.
star and make me eat my words I just said about him. So
I didn't have him going there. Honestly, with second look, I don't really think that this is the answer. I had Dallas Cowboys listed, and it kind of fit with their draft pick. Like the Cowboys' second overall pick. Let's see here. That's going to be the 56th overall. I don't think Franklin's a first round talent. But I do think that with the route running that could complement CD Lamb, take a little bit of pressure off of him. Brandon Cooks is not the downfield threat that he used to be. I feel like that they intended to bring him in with. Michael Gallup has been released. They really don't have great talent. Otherwise, Jalen Tolbert kind of believed in, honestly, coming out of college, at least as a deep threat, but they have not been utilizing him at all. And the more I look into it, the more I feel like they're going to take Jonathan Brooks in the second round and wait on that running back to come back. So, if I had to choose a second team for him to go to, I do think that the Buccaneers would be a solid team for him to go to. Downfield stretcher. Mike Evans is getting older. He's going to create less separation on downfield threats, and I think that that's kind of the MO they were looking for in grabbing a guy like A.T. Perry, who is bigger, not speed demon, and Trey Palmer, who is an absolute speed demon but undersized. I think this kind of threads the needle there, and is a guy that they could bring in, a guy that they can get in the late second round. So that's who I have right now. As far as Superflex rookie draft value goes, Evan, what do you got here?
112.
Fair. I think it's
Tell me it's on point, Lee. I knew it. We were.
yeah.
We have to show you the screenshot.
I knew it. I literally knew it. I knew it. Ah, good stuff. Good stuff, brother. It is
definitely
snowing
great.
outside.
When I say you draft him is I say not available. You can have him. I'm not taking him in. I really am not a believer in them all. I believe in a lot of later round wide receivers than I do Troy Franklin. So if you're in a league with me, have fun with him. I won't be taking him.
No, that's completely fair. Even as it seems like a bigger believer than the rest of the crew here, I also have him at 112.
He's got to make
again,
the
this
fourth
is-
round. He's
What'd
got to
you
make the fourth round. I'm talking to me. He's got to make the fourth round. He's got to make
Fourth
at least the
round,
fourth.
Oh
401.
yeah, I mean, if he dropped to the third or fourth round, I'll take him. But,
Okay.
like,
So it's a 301. We'll call it 301.
yeah, I
All right, really
I
quick
would be
then.
happy taking him at the 301, but I'm not taking him anywhere between 112 to 204. Like that's out of the picture to me for him.
Wow, 204. I like it.
Unless
We're not going
he
to
is-
quite get to it on the Atlanta radio broadcast. If you were to take one of these three wide receivers, who would you take? Troy Franklin, Adonai Mitchell, or Keon Coleman?
Mitchell.
Adonai Mitchell.
I like where I got Mitchell going. I think it's going to be a good spot for him.
What if What if he goes to a bad situation, Mason?
I mean, nah, I still would think Mitchell. I mean, there's a few
Mitchell,
teams where
Just on
like
talent.
my top two teams that I have him going to, I think he'll be good there. And I mean, if he does end up in a bad situation, I still think that he will be better. I really don't think Troy Franklin is an NFL level receiver.
If Keon goes to a good situation and or a bad situation, I mean, and then he gets a good situation, then I would take Troy Franklin over him. But it has to be that scenario.
Okay.
I got both of those guys over Franklin. Adonai Mitchell is actually my number 5. I have him going to Buffalo, which if that happens now, that's he could shoot up draft boards. But it's always situation dependent. But yeah, I would have it as Adonai, Coleman, and then Troy Franklin if I was ranking the 3.
Yeah.
I was gonna say Bo Nix made Troy Franklin look good. That's all I got to say.
Really quick, and that's what I was going to touch on, is that I think that Bo Nix and Michael Penix Jr. will end up having good enough landing spots to the point where they are going to jump over Troy Franklin. I also think that even if they land in situations where they are high-end backups, I would still take him over those two QBs over Troy Franklin. All right. That is going to do it. Appreciate you, boys. That's going to do it for the radio broadcast here. I appreciate you guys tuning in. If you guys want to check out the YouTube, we got it over here on Stadium Rant. Come and check out a little bit of extra rookie wide receiver talk. We'll be talking some more wide receivers here for at least another 10 minutes, 15 minutes as we cover Xavier Worthy, the fastest 40 time in NFL Combine history. All right, Lee, I'm gonna kick it off to you. I'll touch on it really quick. Xavier Worthy out of Texas. He's 5'11", 165 pounds, super light, 20.9 years old. He is the only guy that I've seen younger than Troy Franklin here. Right now, Fantasy Pros has his rookie wide receiver ranking as wide receiver 6, the wide receiver 50 in Dynasty ranking as far as wide receivers go. And then he is the 68th overall pick on the PFF big board. What do you guys have to say about Xavier Worthy? I feel like we're all going to have the first point be the same here, but I'm going to send it over to Evan first.
Yeah, I got positives. Fast, and fast.
I mean, yeah, that's
It's literally you were shaking your head no, so I was like, all right, let's send it over to Evan for an outside take. You had exactly what all of us were gonna have.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, the dude's fast.
Yeah. But I mean, he's definitely a capable wide receiver. I mean, that whole offense is the ability to get open. I really like another guy on that offense as well that we'll get into potentially later today or another episode.
It's gonna be another episode, but add 9 mission.
Yeah. But I mean, he's pretty clean. You know, I got some comps that I'm ready to dish out for him as well, and talk about some of the negatives too.
All right, Mason.
I mean, yeah, the big thing is fast. I mean, obviously his name absolutely blew up after the combine, you know, with his 40-yard dash time. And he does have some good route running tools. I mean, it's not just the speed, you know. Some people just be like, oh, he's so fast. And, you know, just having speed doesn't always work. But, you know, he is good at route running as well. And that is big in the NFL. And he does have, you know, those little bits of explosiveness, not just on the deep ball, where, you know, he can break out from a route, break coverage from a corner if they're playing zone, and, you know, maybe get some yards after carry as well. And I do think that I do like him a lot, more than just the speed. I think there's some other aspects there that are to look at that make him an NFL worthy receiver. Worthy is worthy.
So I would compare it to, and this is a little bit of a basketball analogy, but you hear coaches and basketball scouts say you can't teach 7 foot. You know, a 7 foot tall guy has a natural advantage in basketball. A guy as fast as he is, you can't teach that. You can't train it. It doesn't matter how hard you work. You won't be. There's natural God-given ability to be that fast. Now, some of it comes from the guy who was a track star, and you know, obviously the 40, you know, the underwear Olympics. You're starting from a position that you're never starting from as a wide receiver in the NFL. But the speed is still there. Short. In addition to that, he's also, and I guess this is measured some in the 40. The explosiveness, you know, that short area explosiveness. I would say above average route running tools. I don't know that he always exhibited, and I will get into that in a second with the negatives, but he showed those flashes that he can, you know, quick feet, you know, he has that ability. And for the deep ball, which that's what he's going to be doing earlier, he's got good ball tracking. He can adjust to some bad throws. But, you know, I won't get into the negatives there, but I'm probably not quite as high on Worthy as you guys are.
It's funny. I have very, very similar notes here. The top note, obviously, speed is elite. Exceptional short area burst as well. A solid route runner, definitely above average. His very quick feet and loose hips allows him to create some separation and get some release on press, but not enough to be consistent against press coverage. I do think there is room for improvement there, though. I don't think that, like, just based off the college tape, that is what it is. Write him off as, like, only a slot wide receiver who can't get off a press. I think that can be taught, those release packages, especially with his quick feet. His ball tracking downfield is definitely solid as well. But to me, his landing spot is going to matter more than any other wide receiver on our list, honestly. I think that he is the Devon Achane equivalent for wide receivers this year. if Devon Achane did not go to the Dolphins or perhaps the 49ers and they already had McCaffrey, which, he would have been buried at that point, I would not have valued Devon Achane. As soon as I heard him go to the Dolphins, I jumped all over him. If I hadn't already traded away my 111, he would have been there, and I would have happily taken him and needed him in my dynasty league. But I do think overall that Xavier Worthy is going to be one of the most polarizing players in dynasty leagues. I think you're going to see some leagues where he goes at the 108, 109, potentially even above Brian Thomas solely because of the speed. And I think that in some leagues, you're going to see him valued as what he can actually do on the NFL field if he doesn't go to a team that can scheme open space like the Dolphins and 49ers. So that being said, the negatives I have on him is not a contested catch guy. I would say there's occasionally some focus drops. I don't think that he is quite as consistent as I would like him to be with him creating as much separation as he does. Sometimes he gets open and then drops the easy ball. And then I would also say that overall, he's not going to be a blocker. He's a small guy. We talked about the value that comes from being on the field. And to me, he is going to be one of those wide receivers where if you see him on the field, a pass play is coming. And that's going to limit his opportunities and, prepare the defense for what's coming next. What are some of the negatives you guys had here? I'll go reverse order here. What you got, Lee?
My biggest one, and anytime this is a red flag with any player in college for me, a major red flag is the lack of effort. He takes plays off.
Yep.
If you're doing that at that level, and obviously we know NIL college players, I mean, they were getting money before, let's be real, but they're getting money and we know about it. But you get to the NFL and you become a multimillionaire, I have a hard time seeing that go away. And maybe you can coach that out. But just like you can't teach speed, you can't teach motor. Motor and desire is something that inherently guys are either they have or they don't. And I didn't see that on every play. That concerns me. Obviously, he's a little tiny, very small. I was going to use a bad word, and I know we're just on YouTube, but I don't want to get me too'd either. So he's a
Use your imagination, YouTube.
He's a very small individual. So in the NFL, I know we have switched more to zone, but we still do have these big press corners that are fast. To me, if you press him and you put a safety over the top, you can pretty much take him out of the game. And that's where everybody going crazy about his speed. There's not that many plays where quarterbacks have more than that 3 to 5 seconds, and if you're able to press him, oh God, sorry,
God bless.
If you're able to press him and put a safety over the top, while that does take a safety somewhat out of the play, I think it really negates his ability, and you're really just going to have to see that effort on every play if he's really going to be anything more than a big play threat who is very inconsistent and doesn't have a lot of overall fantasy value.
Yeah. Evan?
Yeah, I mean, he is. I mean, I get the NFL's changing that where some of these wide receivers like Tank Dell are being successful, but he is not Tank Dell. They have one major similarity, but it's not him. And I think that he could be good. He really could be amazing, but he could be bad. It could be tough as well because of his size. So it's a really risky. There's a lot of risk on it, which I think why he is such a polarizing player, and that makes it frustrating to want to get a piece of it, but also kind of want to stay away from it at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, one thing with him is like I was talking about is he did drop a decent amount of balls, and that is big in the NFL. If you are dropping, if you drop a couple big passes, that's a one-way ticket out. And like Lee said, the work effort, it's not necessarily there, and that is a big part. I mean, yeah, you can be good in college, but the NFL is an entirely different level. And if you don't have the work effort to really get yourself past that point, then you know, I do like his speed, and I do think there's some certain spots if he goes there, it will be great for him. But I think there is some downside, and there is a lot of risk with drafting Worthy in the first round.
Okay. Okay. That'll lead into, we'll go player style and projected landing spot. I have Darnell Mooney. I think that's what he'll end up being if he doesn't end in the right landing spot. If he goes to a creative team that can really utilize him, then I think he can be much more than Darnell Mooney. But as of right now, that's about what I see his NFL talent being as. And then for a projected landing spot, I did list the Arizona Cardinals. I have Marvin Harrison Jr. going there and Xavier Worthy going there. I think if you mix both of those two guys, and I think Xavier Worthy will be there for the Cardinals by their second overall pick, which is what is it, 205? Let me double check that really quick. Second round. Oh, so they have the a late first round pick at the 127, and they have the 203. I think either Worthy will be available at that point, and I think that if you get a big old boy like Marvin Harrison Jr. who can do it all, and then Xavier Worthy who can burn everybody on the planet, Kyler Murray is going to be set up between those two and Trey McBride. Um, do most teams take two wide receivers in their first three picks? No. I don't know if it's going to be that likely to the point where they for sure do it. But if both of those guys are available with those two picks, I think it is going to light this offense on fire and really give them, a chance of actually competing in games rather than doing what they're doing now and having Michael Wilson and Greg Dortch go out there.
I think that would be one of the worst possible spots for his fantasy value, if I'm being honest.
What?
I think it would be a horrible spot because if he goes to the same spot as Marvin Harrison, we know Marv is going to attract a ton of targets. Trey McBride is a beast. He is going to get his. I think he would be a decent, a pretty far number 3 maybe. But again, I still believe in Michael Wilson as well. So I think he would be Rondell Moore. If he goes to the Cardinals, I think he would be a Rondell Moore who gets one big game out of every 12 pretty much. I'm going to give you the best possible and the worst possible, or I don't know. Honestly, my worst possible probably isn't as bad as if what you just described happens. Kansas City would be the best. Mahomes, deep ball. They still need that deep threat. We'll see Hollywood coming in. We'll see what Hollywood has left. But I think Kansas City, Buffalo as well. But I don't see Buffalo actually being realistic because he fits that mold that Curtis Samuel and Shakir fit. And I really think they're going with a big receiver. So Kansas City is the best. A little bit off the radar, but the Carolina Panthers is what I had as my worst. Carolina taking him in the second. But honestly, I think he would get more target share and have more opportunity in Carolina than if he was the second wide receiver in Arizona. I think Bryce Young takes a step forward. I don't believe in Mingo. Adam Thielen's 134 years old. They lost Hayden Hurst. I mean, Carolina actually. I'm taking that back. I don't know that Carolina will be that bad a spot for them.
I don't think it would be either. And really quick, just to touch on the Cardinals point, Cliff Kingsbury isn't the head coach anymore. He's not calling plays. It's not going to be a Rondale Moore scheme for him. On top of it, the Chiefs have had a guy like this in McCole Hardman who runs burner fast, undersized, and has done dog shit for fantasy, even with an insane attempts per year. Pass attempts per year. I just don't see a world where the Cardinals is the worst landing spot with nobody on that roster.
But you're adding Marvin Harrison and you're selling Trey McBride short. I think Michael Wilson is a prototypical wide receiver 2 in the NFL as well. I'm probably higher on Michael Wilson than a lot of people.
No, you're not higher than me, probably.
I
Actually,
like Michael Wilson given the opportunity right now.
I have Arizona as my landing spot as well, but it's only if they don't draft Marvin Harrison, because I think he would be a good fit with Michael Wilson, just standalone there too. And I'm confident enough in Michael Wilson to be able to be, wide receiver 1 on that team, and then Xavier Worthy probably wide receiver 2.
You guys think Marvin Harrison Jr. and Xavier Worthy are running the same routes? Do you think they're taking away from each other?
I just don't think that they draft both of them. No shot. And I have them pinned to trade back, and then I'll take Xavier Worthy here, just from my thought process here. I mean, I know that they're probably going to take Marvin Harrison, and then they're definitely not going to take Xavier Worthy, in my opinion. But if it did happen, if they do take Xavier Worthy, I think that they could and easily just trade back from their spot and get Xavier Worthy and be a very well efficient offense with him on there too. They wanted this to be, this is my player style comp. They wanted him to be like the Marquise Brown. That's why they brought in Marquise Brown to be the burner. But he didn't perform and meet their expectations. So I think that they're still going after that type of player.
I could see that, especially in an offense that doesn't have Marvin Harrison. If you got Trey McBride and Michael Wilson, I could actually see that. And I don't know what the hell is going on, because me and Evan are agreeing about everything tonight.
Me and Lee usually agree about everything, and me and Evan usually disagree about everything.
It's kind of nice on this side. I like this side of agreement.
And I honestly feel like wide receivers is like my strongest scouting talent here in comparison to the other 3 positions in fantasy.
Definitely shows in your dynasty team. So
my dynasty team is sick, bro. My dynasty team, especially my wide receivers, are sick.
Take a peek at my dynasty wide receivers, then we'll see.
Hey, I mean, Evan, you probably have Justin Ross, so I'm not going to take that.
I do actually. I do have Justin Ross.
You know that's a fact.
I'm not dropping him. Yeah, I'm making. He's got a spot on my team.
Hey, at least you're holding your points a lot more longer than I am. I'm about the point of dropping, Tony.
Really quick, I just got to defend myself. DJ Moore, Michael Pittman, Jackson Smith and Jigma, Drake London, Jacoby Myers. On my bench, I got Brandon Cooks, Michael Gallup, Jerry Jeudy, and then it's scraps. But
here, while you're on there, read off mine real quick. While you're on there.
Hold up. You have Jacoby Myers, so you're set.
Thank you, bro. And that's on my bench.
Yeah.
You don't want to read off mine, Dad? Are you sure?
No, I'm looking for your team right now. What's your stupid ass name again?
Hurts, don't it?
Nice. I believe you may have touched a nerve.
Hurts, don't it?
All right. So he does have a nice lineup. This is none traded for, but all drafted very early because he only goes rookie wide receivers.
Oh,
Devonta Smith.
Excuses before. Yeah.
It's the reason. Listen, do you want me to read off your other wide receiver?
Read them off. I won't stop.
Let's go to your other dynasty teams. I'm in 3 leagues in with you in dynasty. Let's read off the other dynasty team.
Yeah, no, I mean you're already on the first one, so start with this one. We'll go to the next one.
Oh no, I already moved on to the other dynasty.
As you can see, he doesn't want to read it off. Devonta Smith,
know how this
Amon Ra,
happened,
Nico
man.
Collins, Keenan,
So,
Calvin Ridley,
Nico
Tyreek
Collins,
Hill,
Zay Flowers, Quentin Johnston, Jalen Waddle, and then the bench is Jalen Hyatt, Traylon Burks. What is this guy's name? Bryce Ford Wheaton?
Yep. He's on there.
And Kaylon Moody.
UFL?
What he does is he drafts rookies and hopes for a prayer.
Okay. So
and in that league, the one league he's bringing up, he hit on it. And that's a ton of talent.
Do you think those guys are all misses in that other league too? No, sir.
Okay.
Where did you finish? Evan, where did you finish in that league?
Actually, it just missed the playoffs.
Okay.
Hey, Evan, when you beat Dan next year,
I actually beat Dan twice in that league.
Okay, yeah, exactly.
So we're doing wide receiver dynasty. I'm gonna read mine real quick. I have it pulled up. This is my league of record. Won the championship for the first time. We're 4 seasons in, and this is the one. Obviously, I'm reading the strongest one, but Justin Jefferson, AJ Brown, Rashee Rice, T. Higgins, Jahan Dotson, Jamison Williams, Devontavian Wicks, Michael Wilson, Traylon Burks, Marvin Mims.
I mean, one of your starting wide receivers is probably going to miss a couple weeks, but
he's got a fall guy.
Good.
He's got a fall guy.
Overall, that's a talented roster.
Yeah.
A lot of potential on the bench. We'll see if
You know, this is telling me, this type of conversation telling me we need to be in a league together. We do.
Yeah,
All four of us
hold up.
need to be.
we're
That's
doing
a
that this year.
great
We've already
point.
talked about it. We've got to.
Because we're in one dynasty or not even one dynasty league with
No.
Mason.
Me and Mason.
So yeah,
are
we
in
got to
one.
get in a
We
dynasty
were in
league
a
together.
redraft league last year. I'm only in one league with Lee, and I always try to take from him.
I'm only adding potentially one more league, and I still got to think about it, but I will do it for you guys.
$100
A dynasty league is
Superflex
less
Stadium Rant League. I'm calling it.
maintenance. Dynasty leagues less maintenance. Let's start one up for sure. Let's get everybody in here. Let's get some other stadium rant minds in here, so we know it's going to be competitive.
I'll
Or
tell
if
you
you
right
guys-
now, if we get the boss, Tyler Lamb, in our league, which we should, he's got a bunch of leagues, but I'm sure he'll
He
join
has
us.
so many leagues.
He offers the worst trade proposals that you will ever get. The
I
worst.
sent,
You
I
heard
sent-
it here, Tyler Lamb. You're being called out.
I sent him
The guys you pay are calling you out.
I'm pretty sure I sent him like the 102, 107, like 110, and like 3 other players for Justin Jefferson, and he said that's not even close. And I was just like, all right.
All right, yeah, we'll
How
chalk
many
that one
first
up.
rounders do you need for Sam Darnold's first target?
Yeah,
No, I think that'll be fun. We'll definitely hit him up. If I was smart enough to create clips, one of you guys get on it. One of you guys get on some clips, create that clip. Let's send it over to Tyler. But I think we have one last piece to touch on as far as Xavier Worthy goes. Did we touch on Superflex rookie draft value?
that's all that we got left.
All right, let's cap it off then. Superflex rookie draft value. I'm gonna send it over to Evan first.
I might be a little too high on him here, but I'm unhappy 109.
Wow. Okay, yeah. Mason?
Depending on the landing spot, like if he goes Chiefs or something, just because Chiefs or Bills, because the upside, I'd lean more 110. But I'm more realistically thinking of him as the 112.
Okay. Lee?
Again, obviously, landing spot will dictate this some, but I have him at 201, 202, and that's with a good landing spot. I feel like at times we're blinded by speed, and I think that's the case with him. I think he would make one hell of a kick returner in the NFL, but that doesn't give you a lot of fantasy points unless you're playing in one of those crazy leagues.
Yeah, I'm chasing upside. I'm chasing the upside. That's why I'm not happy with paying that much but I would pay the 109 for him right now. I would.
I still think there's other players that we haven't touched on yet, even at the wide receiver category, that have more upside than him. I'm definitely the furthest on him. I have him at 205. Starting from the second round, we already touched on most of the first round picks here. I believe in Ladd McConkey over him. That's my 201 at 202. And this is a guy that, again, we have not touched on yet outside of Adonai Mitchell that we didn't talk about. Malik Washington is the name that I don't think people are paying enough attention to.
I agree.
He is undersized. He is not the guy that is going to offer the most potential.
He produces, though.
Dude, he produces. That's exactly it. He had the most missed tackles forced of any wide receiver in the league. The dude is short, yes, but he's got the BMI. He's like 192 at like a whole 5'8" inches tall. He is not tall, but the dude breaks tackles. He's tough. He wins at the catch point. He's much more aggressive than Xavier Worthy. He doesn't take plays off. We'll touch on him more next episode. But on top of it, I have Trey Benson, and I touched on it, Adonai Mitchell already ahead of Xavier Worthy. So he is my 205. Not a big believer. Probably won't get much Xavier Worthy in my drafts here. All right. Let's do it. We are ending it here. We might end up making this a 3-parter. Ladd McConkey's going to kick it off next week, so make sure you tune in for some more rookie wide receiver draft coverage. All right, y'all. Have a good week.